Hello there, you are listening to The Screen Queen, where you'll be finding your favorite movie or your favorite television show and learning something new. You'll just have to listen to find out. Here is your host, Samantha Parrish. Hello there and welcome back to the show. As always, my name is Samantha Parrish and you are listening to your main media queen, your host on the East Coast, The Screen Queen. So last year, I was looking for some Christmas films that I'd never seen before, and I saw Jack Frost, and I'm like, why not? I gotta grow my collection. If I don't like it, it's whatever. Well, I accidentally loved it. So I mentioned in my last episode that this film had the weirdest timing of coming out right after a horror film called Jack Frost came out, and my dumbass thought they came out the same year, but I technically was half right and half wrong that it was bizarre timing. But because of that, that's the only thing that makes Jack Frost exist. For the most part, not many people talk about this movie. The only thing that I remember of Jack Frost was seeing it on the shelf whenever my mother and I would go shopping for movies, and I'm like, all right, never heard of it. Like, this just kind of exists. But for the most part, like, it's not a bad thing that exists. Even the times that it was advertised on television, it wasn't really done to death. Like, it's almost like this film is being silenced just because of the way it looks, and no doubt, it's not the greatest looking film, but it's not a bad film, like I said. And then I caught the tail end of it when I was a teenager, and that was just knowing that it's the film about the dad that turns into a snowman. But that's what people remember this as. Like, you would think with big names like Michael Keaton and Kelly Preston that it would have a lot more oomph to it, but it just sort of fell into the hole of the 90s. But, you know, it's not a bad time. It doesn't do anything wrong. It's just not exactly a strong enough films, but the ideas are good for what it presents. But it's not too hard to see why people are a little turned off from the Snowman, why they're not really cool with him. It's going to be an interesting one to talk about, so here we go. This is Jack Frost. So obviously, there's been tons of different variations of Jack Frost. So I went on a little history lesson about where Jack Frost comes from, because obviously there's not really a set definition, but the closest that I could find to where Jack Frost comes from is the Anglo-Saxon period. So they're the ones that put out the tale of Jack Frost, like, oh, Jack Frost is going to be nipping at your nose, and then Jack Frost kind of got a life of his own in fiction to be different characters. And some of them have been very different. Mythological Jack Frost, or the imp Jack Frost, that weird horror movie called Jack Frost, and then the Michael Keaton version. Oh yeah, and then Rise of the Guardians. So Jack Frost has had a very, very weird translation into media. This is like the one that is the most child-friendly, but also the most confusing family movie, in my opinion. But here's the thing, though. This version of Jack Frost has absolutely nothing to do with the lore or the history of the actual Jack Frost. So yeah, it's a Jack Frost film that's not exactly a Jack Frost film. I guess in comparison, it'd be like the Joker film. It's not Batman's Joker, it's just a Joker that would eventually, I don't know, I don't want to get into that can of worms, but you get my gist. So for no one that's ever seen this version of Jack Frost, it follows a singer named, get this, Jack Frost. And Jack's not only just a showman, he's a family man. And he cares very deeply for his family. But unfortunately, he's broken too many promises to his family. He braves a snowstorm to go be with his family for Christmas, but unfortunately, snow and driving don't mix because it automatically makes dead parents, especially in a Christmas movie. So a year later, after Jack dies in a car accident, His family has been grieving. Charlie, however, it's not a good time of the year. This is not the time he likes to be reminded his dad died in a car accident. And one night he makes a snowman, and his father's hat was in the bin that he always wore on his shows, and he puts it on top of the snowman. And then he finds his dad's harmonica that was told by his dad was a magical harmonica. And what do you know? It actually is a magical harmonica because it brings Jack back to life as the snowman. So now Jack has a chance to be with his child and make things right for this Christmas. But hopefully he doesn't melt in the process. That is your plot. Okay. So here's my thing. I get why they have to make the whole ploy that it's the dad not getting to have a moment with his kid, and that's why like the whole plot comes into place, but he's not a bad dad. From the moment Jack comes home, he is immediately in dad mode. He does everything he can to spend time with his son, no matter what happens. He's heavily invested in his life. He's not an absentee father. Yes, he's on the road, but clearly he's getting all the tabs about what's going on at home. It's a weird thing to look at where he's not a bad dad doing everything he can in a job where he isn't always available. He's clearly a dad that still makes the effort when he gets home. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Gregory Peck and the stories his kids shared about how he'd go off to Hollywood, but when he came back, he was a dad. When Jack Frost comes back, he's immediately a dad, no longer the musician. And there is definitely no problems in that marriage whatsoever. It's a kid's film that was very close to not being a kid's film with the way they were looking at each other. When the film presents itself as kind of being self-aware that this is a family that has gotten used to their father being on the road. And when he comes home, he's good as gold. And then they have these problems arise, but they act like this is the first time that it's ever happened. The life of a musician is a complicated one, from what I understand. There isn't really a set schedule, and sometimes there's not enough time, so the time really does play the biggest threatening factor, and you never know when you're going to get home. So this is just kind of the tough slice of life. And so the way that they're getting mad at Jack for something that's not even his fault, it's weird. It's like they're mad at his profession for being the way it is, but that is just the way it is. And also, Jack is technically the breadwinner of this family. That mom is a stay-at-home mom. They kind of need Jack to record that album so they can put food on the table. Yes, it's really sad that this is just another example of many different families that's kind of like this one, to not have your parent home on Christmas, and God forbid they turn into a snowman. But I don't know, that part always kind of irked me with the way they set this film up. It's like they set Jack up to be a good family man that isn't a family man enough when he's doing everything that he can. It's a weird setup, and it hurts the logic in my brain that looks at stuff like that. So it's like, I get the angle, I really do, but when you pour this much love into a family, the fact that this family is like pretty put together, I don't know, like if he was not there all the time, then that would make more sense. But he is there, and he does make a point to do what he can. It's weird. Like, I get it, but it's weird. If they're gonna present a dad that's not keeping his promises, then he should have been a dad that continued to not keep his promises, because clearly he's doing everything he can to be a great dad when he has a moment to do so. But I don't know, maybe this was the one thing that he could not pass over without doing, was being there for his son at that moment. And like, that also makes sense too, but still, the way that they have presented too much positivity in this family makes it hard to find anything negative. And when something negative is approached, it doesn't really seem fluid. But I do have to say, I really like Kelly Preston in this movie. I had to think about it. When she plays in movies, she's mostly just known for being a romantic interest or a mom. But whenever she played a mom, she made it count. She didn't just play a mom. She played a mom that suited the story. Whatever energy had to happen, she matched that energy. She was that damn good. In fact, one of my favorite roles of her is her playing a mom in a movie called Death Sentence, where my heart breaks over and over whenever I see her in that film. That was just how good she is. It's no wonder John Travolta constantly gushed about her. And every time I do see this movie, it does break my heart a little bit knowing that this is kind of the way that we're going to be remembering her, is whatever was left in the films that she was in. And as much as that is forever, there's a bit of a solemn feeling for it. The way she plays a mom in this movie is kind of the same equivalence to seeing the mother from A Christmas Story. Someone that you remember for being maternal and loving without having to be pushy, like someone that makes you feel like you're home. The part in the film where she's trying to make her son feel better, it's beautiful. It's like Hallmark couldn't even get that sappy and sweet at the same time, because usually they're just mostly saps. Anyway, everything that she does in this character to make her child feel better, it feels like the thing a mom would do. When she takes the marshmallows and she's like, how about 4? How about 8? How about 500? It's great. But only she could pull that off. Like, I don't think anybody else could. So I think it's time to talk about the reason why this film is very mixed. Jack Frost himself. So there's been tons of interpretations about how to present Jack Frost. But this just feels like a Muppet from hell. I did happen to look that the Jim Henson Company was a part of this production, but sometimes the puppeteering looks good, and sometimes it looks like you wish you kept the receipt to a movie that you didn't remember paying for. In some ways, the CGI does make it look better or worse, or it's one of those, it just is so bad that it's tolerable. And I feel like that's where I'm at with this movie, is that I notice it's bad, but it's tolerably bad. It's putting an effort in there, even though it doesn't look like the greatest effort. Especially in some scenes where Jack is throwing snowballs and it just looks so uncomfortably CGI for a time period in the 90s that was crafting that very well. But then again, this is a kid's movie, so you can kind of get away with a lack of effects, but still, looking at the way it ages today, it's like you have to look at something that doesn't exactly look good, but you can tolerate it for what it is. But honestly, I feel Michael Keaton saves this film from its weird effects. Michael Keaton is like the best part of any bad movie. The way that he puts 100% of himself into this film, even though you only hear his voice, it does bring Jack Frost to life. The way that it moves kind of like a constipated Pillsbury Doughboy, but it feels a little bit more lifelike. I can tell that this is the dilemma that Jack is stuck being a fucking snowman. And I feel that. And I feel like if that wasn't there, I don't think this film would have been as great. This puppet doesn't really do too much, because it can't do too much. So having someone like Michael Keaton giving all of his Michael Keaton-ness to this movie, he plays a good dad, and he plays a fun snowman. It doesn't look too fun, but he tries. So as I've mentioned a million times in here, that we've always had several different adaptations of Jack Frost, and there's been several different ideas about what Jack Frost looks like. Well, I actually found out the origin of why this Jack Frost is so oddly specific. It's because he's modeled after George Clooney. Yeah, let me tell you what. So, before Michael Keaton came onto the project, they had originally cast George Clooney. But unfortunately, George Clooney kind of had to pull a Back to the Future and get out of the project midway because he got in for the Batman role. So he's like, sorry guys, I know you already made this model after me, but I'm going to go be Batman, because why would you pass up Batman? Which is kind of funny considering George Clooney went to go fight Dr. Freeze. So when Michael Keaton comes on. He's basically playing a snowman that is supposed to be George Clooney. So he's basically playing George Clooney. I mean, how else would you call it? You should just erase Jack Frost and just put, George Clooney, and then just be like a new snowman. Like, it's so bizarre to know that's where it came from. For a while, I thought, oh, like, they just made this up, right? When I saw this movie, I caught the tail end of it. So I thought, like, oh man, this guy just got shafted with this weird snowman, not knowing, oh, so that was on purpose. Man, that really changes the way I see this film now. Like, I still love it for the family value, but once you know a snowman is modeled after George Clooney, it gets a little bit funny. But it's not every day that you can say you had two Batmans involved with your project and never have to specify. They can just leave it at that. So I have a random segue because I did not know where I could fit this into the episode. But for anyone who loves the film The Iron Giant, Hogarth Hughes was in this film before The Iron Giant came out. So Eli Marenthal, he plays one of Charlie's friends, and he's not given much screen time, and I'm kind of surprised they gave him a screen credit name, but oh well, you take what you can get for credit. But because he did Jack Frost before The Iron Giant, this is kind of like a pre-fame film for him. Now he's forever known for The Iron Giant, but I'm kind of surprised that he's not known for his little time on the Jack Frost film. Yeah. But then again, if you say Jack Frost, it's like, which one, So, now that I got that random trivia fact out of the way, I want to dive back into the family angle earlier. Since this is a family movie, I do have to give this family movie a credit. I don't think I've ever seen a grief scene played the way that Jack Frost had it. There's been a lot of Christmas films that have a grief angle, and sometimes it kind of feels like a checkerboard for how many cliches you can write off to give so much pain during Christmas time. But because grief doesn't really plan to get you, it feels a little bit more realistic. In the scene in the beginning where Charlie is trying to get the ice out of the driveway, he's trying to pick up the steam, and unfortunately, there's a lot of grief on his 12-year-old shoulders. And his mother comes home and goes, Charlie, it's okay. Like, I got it. And he's like, no, Mom, I got it. And it's so sad because it's a kid that clearly loves his family. And he's not over his dad's death yet because, how did you get over a parent's death in a year? It's physically impossible. You would have to be Stephen Hawking to know that. And the way that this family just has a meltdown in the middle of the driveway, like something that's an unplanned meltdown handled the way that you would want it to be handled. There are a lot of films that deal with grief, but this film always comes to mind when I think about films that portray grief in a way that's not underacting or overacting. It's just a moment that has to pass. And for this being a film about a dad that died a year ago, and a dad that apparently was so bad, you do feel the weight of loss within this film. And it can be very easy in a kid's film to just make grief come and go, but you sit with it a little bit, and I got to give you credit for that. So in the weird research that I've done for this film, I thought that finding out George Clooney being the snowman was the weirdest thing I found. Well, turns out I was wrong. I also read that Sam Raimi had expressed interest in his involvement, and I'm just like, listen, dude, you already traumatized me with some trees. I don't think I want to see you do something terrifying. They already did that. They don't need it again. But that is kind of interesting that there were some high-profile people that really wanted to be a part of this project, and even though it just worked its way with the cast that it had and whatever they did to that fucking puppet that looks like George Clooney, it's kind of nice that this film kind of lived as a hot ticket item, even if it didn't really live up to its potential, but kind of found another home in the 90s. There's nothing really wrong with Jack Frost. I mentioned earlier that this is a pretty solid family film that has a solid family involved. And, it's what kind of makes a family movie. I mean, it kind of hiccups once in a while, and that snowman's going to give me nightmares. But if anything, the awkwardness is a bit of a charm to it. The songs are honestly too catchy, especially finding out that Michael Keaton provided 2 of those songs. Like, even though this wasn't a film that went anywhere, like, there's too much of a blueprint here to see that people really did contribute a lot to a film that may or may not go anywhere. I mean, sure, you can find Jack Frost in any type of Christmas movie, right down to its blueprint, but Jack Frost had enough loopholes to escape some of those cliches, and even found a way to make the cliches kind of charming. It's not a perfect film, but I like that it's a perfectly flawed film. It has the right amount of stuff into a film that has a good heart. It might not have much, but damn it, it does have a lot of heart. That's the best thing you can put into a film. Well, I think that's going to be a wrap on Michael Keaton's second underrated Christmas film, but this was fun to get into a family-friendly film. I feel like I haven't done one of those in a while, except for, Disney or whatever comes through the grapevines. I was checking my schedule, and the next episode for the Christmas series is going to be falling right before Christmas, so it's really going to be coming down the line here, folks. So let's find out what the episode's going to be before Christmas. All right, what have I got? Oh, Lord, what are you? I'm scared. Oh, no. Oh, why? Okay, I guess I asked for it. So, well, I mean, might as well. So, we're going to be having a first on the Christmas series, probably the first in the Screen Queen in general. We're going to be having a new film that came out this year, and that episode is going to be Dear Santa. Oh, that's going to be something. Let's just say that. If you couldn't already tell by the way that I reacted to it, I'm sure I might not be the only one. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you would like to share me your thoughts about Jack Frost and how Michael Keaton was unusually good in that film, you can hit me up I can't talk anymore. You can hit me up on my Instagram at the Queen of the Screen. And as always, I like to advertise my book series, Inglorious Ink, which is available on Amazon. But you can find that bad boy in the description box. Alrighty, you all take care now. Stay amazing. And whatever you do, do not put a hat on a snowman, because now we know what's going to happen. Frost, this snowman was just the beginning. Anyway, y'all take care now and have a happy holiday. This is your Screen Queen signing off. Bye-bye.